person with lived experience is often an afterthought, and what we bring is not recognised as expertise, which is why I think we need to talk about lived experience and expertise rather than just lived experience. Nobody else can talk about living with diabetes and what that means and what it feels like and how we manage it. And we need allies to make that happen.
Renza, welcome to the Via Diabetes interview series.
Thanks, Olivia. I'm so excited to be here.
I guess it would be good for our viewers to know when you got diagnosed with diabetes and how you tend to manage it on top of your daily life and work.
I was diagnosed in April of 1998, so nearly 28 years ago now. And, how do I manage it? Badly, generally. I'm really very not good at diabetes, but, it's just part of everything. It's you don't get a say, do you? So, the technical side of things is that I use a hybrid closed-loop system. It's a DIY system that I very happily have been using now for over 8 years and just try to get through the day.
You've been working in diabetes advocacy since about 2001, is that correct?
Yes, it is. 25 years.
Could you share some highlights from your work?
Showing up to work every day is a highlight. I'm so fortunate to do the work that I do and to have done it for so long. I absolutely never take that for granted and realise how very lucky I am. If I was to look at highlights, working in organisations where there were years of campaigning and bringing together community and clinicians and getting across the line something like, for example, CGM funding for all people with type 1 diabetes in Australia. That was, huge and something obviously that we are very proud of and so pleased about. But I think then there's also just the changing, the way that things shift slowly. Advocacy is such a slow burn, so things take time. But, the idea that we now have an expectation, we're not there yet, but there is an expectation that there will be people with diabetes, for example, at conferences and having a very significant presence. And so working with DDoC has actually, I think, probably been the biggest way that we've seen that change. DDoC has been truly remarkable with what they have done, really seeing that people with lived experience are given those central roles now, and that doesn't happen overnight. I think people may not realise what goes on to make something, that seems almost normal now, for that to become a reality.
How do you think policy around diabetes in general has changed since you started working in advocacy?
Well, I can tell you that if we're looking at diabetes more broadly, back when I first started working in advocacy, we weren't looking at risk reduction, and I use the term risk reduction and not prevention because I think prevention is a terrible term. But if we're looking in, for example, in type 2 diabetes, there was very little work being done really around risk reduction around type 2 diabetes. And sadly, whilst I guess now we understand a little bit about there are modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. But unfortunately, I think that we sort of launched into that space and to start to develop policy around that without actually thinking necessarily what the impact was going to be on people with diabetes. But it has become something that, we speak about, that we understand that we need programs to support people to reduce their risk, where we're talking about those modifiable risk factors, non-modifiable risk factors we can't do anything about. But I think that that's probably been one change. We've seen huge change in terms of access to technology in higher income countries. We've got some absolutely remarkable tales to tell. We can look at what is going on in the NHS with access, particularly for type 1 diabetes. We can look here in Australia. But, for every single change that we get all excited about living in a higher income country, that's not mirrored in any way in lower income countries. And I think perhaps that's one of the things that we need to do better about, is really looking at how we can improve that.
But in general, in Australia and the higher income countries, do you think the speed of change is acceptable?
No, nothing is acceptable until every single person has access to everything they need to live their best diabetes life. I don't think we can say that it's acceptable. There are still people in higher income countries who are struggling, and higher income countries does not mean everybody in that country is high income. And if we look at the most vulnerable populations, they are always most negatively impacted. They are not considered in policy change as much as they need to be. They are not part of the conversation as much as they need to be. There are far too many many people who look and sound like me sitting at tables, and not enough of people who are so significantly impacted by diabetes that they simply don't get and they simply are not given the opportunity or brought along to have those conversations.
So you spoke about advocacy burnout specifically during VIA's first ever meeting last year. Is that something that you still continue to face?
I think that advocacy burnout is a reality that very, very many people living with diabetes, working in the advocacy space, feel. Living with diabetes is an act of advocacy itself. We are advocating every day. We're advocating all the time. So we all feel that burnout in some way or another. But, working in the diabetes advocacy space, there are times where it does get exhausting. Just like anybody working in any job as well, where it's your job as well. And this is sort of something I would love to say, and, for people to hear who are not necessarily people who've lived experience with diabetes, but who want to work with people with diabetes in the advocacy space. Understand what it is that you're asking us to do, because if you're bringing us along on your advocacy journey as the person who's going to be able to provide that heart and that lived experience, you are asking somebody to relive what could be trauma over and over and over again. And are you doing that in a way where you're also providing whatever it is that people need to deal with that and to manage that, for it to be recognised that that is something that people are doing?
Is there something that you do when you just feel like it's all too much?
I probably don't do what I should do, which is take a beat, take a rest, go for a walk. I think I wrote something last year about how a lot of us are not really very, very good at doing that. I think the way I phrased it was something like, we've drunk the Kool-Aid believing that we have to be superheroes and superpowered and just push through, and that's really not a good idea.
Do you, or have you ever suffered from any kind of mental health issues related to your diabetes?
Yeah, absolutely. Living with diabetes every day is distressing. I have quite significant anxiety at times about a lot of things, and diabetes very much feeds into that. A lot of people with diabetes do have this fear of the unknown and the fear of the future. Part of that, I think, is the messaging of what we're told when we're diagnosed. I still very much remember the threats almost that were handed down to me at diagnosis nearly 28 years ago, where I was told that all of these complications were going to happen if I didn't do what I was told to do, as if doing those things is just really simple.
At VIA, we've noticed, and I'm sure you know as well, there aren't enough people who actually live with diabetes speaking on panels about diabetes. Why do you think this is still a thing?
Person with lived experience is often an afterthought, and what we bring is not recognised as expertise, which is why I think we need to talk about lived experience and expertise rather than just lived experience. Nobody else can talk about living with diabetes and what that means and what it feels like and how we manage it. And we need allies to make that happen. DDoC and EASD have this great partnership where EASD now, when they're putting together a guideline committee, they have space for people with diabetes to be part of that. We're nowhere near close enough, but we are now starting to see at least people saying, well, this has to happen.
So why do you think diabetes research is so underfunded, and what can we do as well as a community to change that?
So I think that one of the issues is that we've got a lot of rehabilitation that we need to do to repair the image problem that we have of diabetes. And that, unfortunately, is really a significant image problem about type 2 diabetes, because for too long we have spoken about this as a condition of personal responsibility without looking at actually what are the factors that contribute to type 2 diabetes. So until we actually have people understanding the seriousness of diabetes, of all types of diabetes, until we have people understanding that this isn't a self-inflicted condition, it's hard to get people to want to reach in their pocket and say, yep, this is a worthy cause that we should be funding.
My final question is, what is one piece of advice that you would give a newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic?
So here's what I'm going to say. The first one is be kind to yourself. You don't have to have this worked out after day one. And number 2, find community. Find your people. Look out and actively go and search for other people with diabetes who are going to be your absolute lifelines. These are the shoulders that we stand on every day, the people who have gone before us and who are doing amazing things. It might be a support group, but it equally could be that you just happen to find out that your neighbour lives with diabetes as well, and you've got something there that you can have a chat with them about. For me personally and my diabetes, it has been the biggest life-changing thing, has been the people who live with diabetes, who I'm lucky enough to call friends and colleagues and to work with, and get to hang out with. I do believe that people with diabetes are truly remarkable. And I think that we do need to be working together to find ways to make sure that we are very much present in all conversations about diabetes. One of the things that I, am known for saying when I am sitting on a panel and I am the only person with lived experience is I will say I am the most important person here. And every single person with diabetes in this room is the most important person here. And we need to really not be too backwards in coming forwards. We're about being bullshit about things. It's okay for us to be really bullshit and demand that is how we are seen.
Thank you so much, Renza, and thank you so much for joining us on our interview series. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to meet you and talk to you. I can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Olivia. This has been lovely. Take care. Have a good day.